Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. For the people who are sitting outside US in other parts of the world and attending this webinar, I welcome you all on this webinar, question and answer webinar on an environmental management system, ISO 14001 standard. A little intro about myself. I myself is Syed Arshad Hashmi. I'm the training manager at Bureau Veritas Certification North America. By profession, I'm an engineer, and I'm a lead auditor and trainer in a lot of ISO standards related to quality, environment, health and safety, information security, business continuity, energy management, asset management, and anti-bribery management systems. By profession, I'm an engineer, and I have more than 25 years of experience working into this field of international standards and certifications. The first 16 years of my career were working as a consultant. So I provided consulting expertise, almost to 140 consulting assignments where I implemented these international standards in different organizations. I've been associated with Bureau Veritas for the last 10 years, and I've been working as an auditor and trainer and a training manager at Bureau Veritas North America. I've conducted a number of trainings and audits throughout USA, Europe, Canada, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, Middle East, Pakistan, and a lot of places. I'm a certified IRCA trainer, and I'm also an certified information security manager and certified in risk and information system control by ISACA. So that was a brief about myself. Brief about Bureau Veritas. Bureau Veritas is the global leader in testing, inspection, and certification. Our mission is to shape a world of trust by reducing client risk, improving their performance, and helping them innovate to meet challenges of quality, health and safety, environment protection, and social responsibility. It's a French company. It's mostly present in Europe. Nevertheless, it is present throughout the globe. Some of the certifications that we offer are related to health and safety, quality, environment, food safety, social accountability, security, and there are certain others international certifications that we offer. And we provide training against all these certifications. This is our global clientele, just for the reference. We are present globally, and we have a total client base of more than 400,000 customers worldwide. This is our YouTube channel. So for any webinar that you like to refer that has happened before, they're all available on our YouTube channel, Bureau Veritas North America. For this particular webinar, I would, there are other webinars which has happened. I would like you to remember the website, which is called bvna.clickmeeting.com, and I'll show that again. All the webinars are also available there, where you can go and get yourself registered for free, and you can attend, or your colleagues can attend the webinar. So this webinar and all the other webinars, they're also available on our bvna.clickmeeting.com. So the questions that we received, and I set the expectations versus the questions so that everyone will have a takeaway out of this webinar. I will be covering different topics, but what I've done is that with respect to the questions that I received, I have put the expectations in 4 domains. And those 4 domains or 4 categories are like this. So first, I would be discussing the environmental issues, climate change, greenhouse gases, carbon footprinting, ozone layer, and biodiversity. And there are a number of issues. So people like to know about those environmental issues, which is impacting the environment, how we can go about them, and what exactly they are, what is greenhouse gas, and what is carbon footprinting. So I'll be discussing on those issues. That will be the first area that I'll be covering. Then the second category of question that I received, that is regarding the standard. People like to know about the environmental management system standard, what is the structure, what are the different concepts. Especially people like to know about aspect and impact analysis and how to find out significant impact. So that is my second domain. They are asking questions regarding the structure of the standard. So I'll be covering that in my second category within this webinar. And then the third one would be the environmental laws and regulations. So a lot of people want to know what are the different laws, how to find out those laws, and where how to comply with those laws, and what is the impact on our industries. So I'll be covering that as the third category. And then the fourth category would be the environmental performance evaluation. People like to know that how to evaluate the performance. So I've added a few slides, and I would try to address those issues so that people can understand that how once you implement the environmental management system, how to evaluate the performance, what are the different parameters that you can set, and what is basically the process within the whole environmental performance evaluation that you need to follow. Other than that, there is another category of questions which I left it open because people ask me different questions regarding the lead auditor certifications and the cost to the 14001 standard, and what is the implementation challenges that one has to face. So I've kept it as others, and once I'll cover those major four categories because I received maximum questions regarding these four categories, then I'll be addressing those areas towards the end of my presentation. So let's start with the environmental issues first. So these are all the environmental related issues. And you can see on the left that all these terminologies, they may not be very much unknown to you. You must have heard these terms: the global warming, the climate change, the depletion of the ozone layer, loss of biodiversity. So these are all the environmental issues that is there. Global warming is one of those phenomena in which the temperature of the earth is rising. And due to that rise in temperature of the earth, the ability of the agricultural land that has been impacted, the snow and glaciers that has also been impacted, and the water levels are rising. So the global warming phenomena is very much related to the environmental issues. And what is basically causing this global warming are different categories. One of the greatest one is called the greenhouse gases. Now, what is the concept behind this greenhouse gases? Now, greenhouse gases are all those gases which are being emitted as a result of industrialization, as a result of running the vehicles, as a result of a lot of other activities that we do. And those gases, which are mostly the oxides of carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur, methane, all these gases, basically what they do is that they let the ultraviolet radiations from the sun to fall on the earth. And then when the heat is generated, they do not let it go outside in the environment, rather they absorb it. And the part of it, they send it back to the earth. So those, all the greenhouse gases, they basically are the major contributors towards the global warming and a climate change. And we need to control all those emissions. So the global warming phenomena is related to a number of different aspects. One of them, the biggest one, is the greenhouse gases, and then the depletion of the ozone layer. So again, all these gases that has been produced, they are also impacting the ozone layer. And ozone layer is very important for the sustainability of the earth because the ozone layer stops the harmful radiation to reach the earth crust again, which impacts the agricultural ability of the earth and cause some other diseases as well. So the existence of the ozone layer is again an important phenomena in the sustainability concept. The third one is the loss of biodiversity. So we need to understand that every habitat on this earth exists for a reason. Some of the reasons are pretty obvious, like, for example, the plants that we have, the trees that we have, the jungles that we have, we all know that they absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. So their existence is basically is there to ensure the ecosystem in which every habitat has a part to play. And with all the emissions and all the effluents from our industry, we are impacting the existence of those species. And as I said, every species has a part to play, including the coral reefs that we have or the fishes that we have. Everyone is contributing. Some are obvious and some are not obvious. So that loss of biodiversity is happening because of a lot of waste that we are letting go into the air, into the environment, into the earth, or into the land and into the waters. So loss of biodiversity is another big environmental issue that we need to consider. Other than that, the air pollution, water pollution, and waste, I think this is self-explanatory, as the name implies. So as you are seeing all these environmental issues, there are protocol and conventions, which is basically the agreement by a number of countries that they're going to follow certain rules and regulations within their countries, stop the global warming, stop the depletion of ozone layer, loss of biodiversity. They have not been followed in true spirit due to a number of social, economical, and political reasons. But we need to understand that there are protocols and conventions in the world, and world is well aware of it. How much they are implemented, that is a question mark. So these are all the environmental issues that is related to the environmental management system. And the concept here is that for a sustainable development, the resource depletion should be less than the resource regeneration. This is a very interesting concept and a very fine line you need to understand, that in order for us to make this earth a sustainable element for all the generations, not for only our generation, but for the generations to come, then meeting the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their needs. So this is what is important. We need to understand that we need to impact the environment or use the resources of this earth in a manner that the healing process or the repair process of this earth or regeneration process of this earth should be more as compared to what we are using and what resources of the earth that we are consuming in our activities. So that is the basic concept against sustainable development. And it has a triple effect, which is environmental issues, social issues, and economic issues. And somebody also asked me a question regarding the ESG initiative, which is basically an environmental, social, and corporate governance initiative. And they were asking me that if this is related to the ISO 14001 is related to that. Yes, absolutely. The ISO 14000 contributes to the E part, which is the environment part of that, in terms of consuming the resources and not impacting the environment or polluting the environment. So the environmental element of the ESG initiative has been heavily contributed by ISO 14001. Now, I would like to think about this picture, and I would like to think about a caption of this picture. So what do you understand? And it's self-explanatory. You can well understand this thing, that as you're passing by in your car, you're seeing a land in green. And as you pass by and as you look in the rear view mirror, you can see that there is no greenery in this land. And the caption of this picture could be, it's coming too fast. We need to understand, we need to realize that climate change, which we used to talk about 50 years back or 100 years back as only a phenomena, has become a reality. A lot of countries has become very serious about this climate change, and they're taking initiatives. Carbon footprinting, a lot of controls, I'll discuss that later. They're all become part of their policies, and they are taking initiatives to control that climate change to make it sustainable for the generations to come. So that is the objective of the environmental management system. So this picture is telling you the urgency of this environmental management system, or climate change or environmental issues to be addressed as soon as possible. Now, what is the objective of environmental management system? So keeping in view those environmental issues which I just discussed, the biggest objective of this environmental management system you can understand if you take your industry as an example. Okay. And if you can see on the left side, there is a society is also shown. Few houses are also shown, which are being impacted by the industrialization or industries that exist. So one of the things that you can correlate with is the smoke, dust, and vibration and noise that causes the nuisance. So that is one type of impact on the environment by the industries. The other type is air emissions, which may cause global warming and ozone depletion and acid rain. The other one can be spillage. So all the chemical spillage or the water spillage that you are doing or the industry is doing, that may cause the biodiversity loss, visual pollution, land contamination, sewage contamination, and water pollution. So we need to understand all these aspects. And then waste storage and dispatch. So land, water pollution, and nuisance and odor and litter, these are all the aspects. And very interestingly, this picture is applicable to any type of industry whatsoever. Even if you're talking about a hospital, if you're talking about a manufacturing unit, if you're talking about an oil and gas, if you're talking about a pharmaceutical, those are all manufacturing and processing units. But if you go to the other side, like for example, let's take the example of a bank or an insurance company or a service sector, a hospital, hotel industry, purely a service sector where there is no manufacturing going on, this particular picture is applicable to any type of industry whatsoever. What is different? Maybe the air emissions may not be in a service sector the way it is there in a manufacturing sector. But in a service sector, the air emissions are there in terms of the vehicles that they are using, or in terms of the generators that they are using. So the quantity of those air emissions may not that be significant, but the aspect or the dimension or the element of air emission is always existing in a service sector as well as in a manufacturing sector. So what is different is basically the extent of it. The extent of air emission, the extent of waste storage, the spillage and nuisance may vary from industry to industry, but they do exist. And this is exactly the objective of the environmental management system, to help you evaluate those dimensions or those elements, which is called aspect in our environment management system, and to control them. So in totality, the objective can be, and there's one which is called heat and energy loss and waste of resources and global warming. So that is another one. So in totality, what we say is that to an industry, there's always an input, and then there are outputs in terms of air emissions, in terms of their products, solid and liquid waste, and in terms of water emissions. So the objective can be described as that environmental management system control the environmental interfaces. So it controls that how much you're polluting the environment and how much you are impacting the environment. It keeps a track, it keeps a control on all those interfaces which is exposed to the environment, and let you do business in a controlled manner, in a known and aware manner. That is the objective of the environmental management system. With that, let me discuss about the structure of the 14001 environment management system. A lot of questions were submitted regarding the structure of the 14001 standards. Maybe people may know, some other people may know about this 14001 structure, but I'll quickly go through the overall structure, and then we'll highlight few important elements within the 14001 standard, like aspect impact analysis, life cycle perspective, for which I received very specific questions, or management of change. So I'll discuss that, but let me give you an overall view of the 14001 management system standard structure. So basically, the standard structure is something like this, which comprises of the 10 clauses. And these 10 clauses, interestingly, or these 10 headings or clauses, interestingly, are the same as in 9001 or 45001, or there are other many standards. And due to the similarity between the standards, this top level structure is called high level structure. In short, it's called HLS. So one of the phenomena that ISO has followed is that they have made the standard on these 10 clause structures so that it's very easy to understand the other standards. So whatever I'm going to tell you about this structure is also true for 9000, for 14, for 45000, for any standard which exists on this 10 clause structure, these 10 headings. So this is another exploded view of this 10 clause structure, and I've highlighted a clause 6 in different color because I'm going to talk about this clause. And this is basically, I consider this as the foundation clause. So this lays down the foundation for a specific management system, that how you're going to establish that management system, on what basis, what are the different aspects that you need to cover, and what are the different impacts and the significant impact that you need to cover and you need to evaluate. So this basically, this clause provides the basis for establishing an environmental management system, and based on this clause, you will implement the system as per the major clause, which is the 8th clause. So all the controls that you highlight in the 6th clause are implemented through the 8th clause. So 6 and 8 are very closely correlated. That's why I have put that in a different color. Otherwise, you will find all the other clause structure in this standard, for that matter, in 9000, 45001, or any other food safety standard which is on a 10 clause structure, the same way. So 4, 5, 7, 9, and 10 are usually similar clauses, and 6 and 8 are called discipline-specific clauses, which is specific to a quality management system, environment management system, or health and safety management system. Now, among that 10th clause, the 4 till 10 are the clauses where the requirements are laid down. So we also call these 4 till 10 clause as auditable clauses. So when you will be audited by any external agency, they will be auditing you against 4 till 10 clause. And when you will be internally auditing your own organization, you will also be auditing against 4 till 10 clause. And when you have to implement this international standard within your organization, you again need to focus between 4 till 10 clause where the requirements are laid down. And again, this is true for 9000 and 45001 or any other standard. Now, the philosophy behind this 4 till 10 clause is a cycle which is called a continual improvement cycle. This is a Deming cycle. It stands for plan, do, check, and act. Very famous cycle, maybe known by a lot of people. So out of these 10 clauses, the philosophy of planning lies between 4, 5, 6, and 7. So all the first 4 clauses helps you plan a environmental management system. 7 is a little overlap between the planning and do as well, but we keep it for plan for simplicity. The do clause is my 8th clause, which is operation. The check clause is the performance evaluation, which is 9th clause. And I'm going to talk about this clause later. And the 10th clause is the improvement clause, which is basically corrective action and incidents. So this is the 7 clause philosophy that you need to understand behind this structure of the 14,001 standard, which is based on plan, do, check, and act cycle. Now, the important part, or let me discuss that later. So let me discuss the important clause in that, which is the planning clause. And it comprises of 4 clauses, which talks about the general and then environmental aspects, compliance obligation, and planning action. So I'll be focusing some areas in that, and people want to know certain case studies or certain examples on aspect impact analysis and to want to understand that how they can declare the significant aspects and how to go about all of that. So I've put certain slides and I will put certain explanation to the 6th clause, which mainly comprises of the aspect impact analysis. So first of all, what is the definition of the environmental aspect? Now, aspect is an element of an organization, activities, or products or services that can interact with the environment. Like I gave you the pictorial view, and I'll show you that picture again, that whatever the company is doing, if that's making a noise, if that's doing any air emission, if that's doing any spillage, water effluents are there, or if that's producing certain solid waste, those are all the aspects that can impact the environment. So we need to understand that in our activity, in our industrial working, what are the different elements of the organization that can impact an environment. And impact is something which is the change in the dimension of an environment, a change in the element of the environment. For example, an air emission causes air pollution. So air emission is an aspect and air pollution is an impact. Similarly, land pollution, similarly, water pollution. So whichever way you can put that impact. So the change in the environment due to an activity of the organization. So basically the activity is the reason or the cause, and impact is the change in the environment. So I'm showing you my previous slide again. So now you can see from the perspective of aspect impact analysis. I've changed the heading of it now. That these are all the aspects, possible aspects which can impact the environment. And again, I would reiterate and re-emphasize on the fact that this picture is not just true for a manufacturing unit. It is true for any organization for that matter, only that the amount of spillage and amount of waste storage and amount of that heat energy loss or air emissions or nuisance, whatever the aspect of the organization are, that may vary in terms of the extent because of the nature of the business that you are in. So, but you will have this picture constant. This will be there. And you need to evaluate and you need to calculate and you need to find out that in your industry, in your particular organization, which are the most significant one, which may impact the environment. And then you need to put controls on that. And then you need to consider certain legal laws, which I'm going to discuss again in my coming slides. But that is the aspect impact analysis. So to come up with an example and to go into the details to explain you more on the aspect impact analysis, I have put this sheet here, and you can well understand that every aspect impact study also gives us the risk and also gives us the opportunity as well. So now let's start from the left. And I'm considering a fossil fuel based boiler operation, any boiler that you are running based on a fossil fuel. So what are the aspects? Consumption of heating oil that we are consuming, and which is maybe causing the emission of gases like oxides of sulfur, nitrogen, and carbon, as I discussed before. And then there could be aspect of discharge of oil to land and water. So if we just discharge it without recycling it, that may also cause the land pollution. So first we need to consider that related to boiler activity, there are certain aspects, and then the impact for the top one, consumption of heating oil, could be in terms of the depletion of natural resources, the pollution of air, the respiratory impact on local residents, and acid rain impact on surface water change. So these are all the impacts, possible impacts that could be there. And as you understand that we are using the oil, so there is a depletion of natural resource. So there is a fine line because we have to run the boiler, we have to use it. But could there be a boiler with another fuel usage other than the fossil fuel? That is where the opportunity part comes in. And if you can see on the bottom right corner, the fuel switchover. So it also gives you a thinking process to change the fuel type, so that you may think of going solar or whichever other fuel that you may use, which may helps us in the depletion of natural resources. So that is an opportunity in itself. But then you also need to understand that these all the impacts, including the land contamination and groundwater pollution, that also poses us a risk, which is legal and non-compliance risk, and global warming and climate change. So all these risks are also there. And so any aspect impact analysis ends up with having the knowledge regarding the risk it um, it uh, it contains and the opportunity it brings to the organization to better their environmental performance. So this is one of the examples. I can give you further examples. For example, if you can consider your vehicle, simple your vehicle. So if you're running your vehicles, any car that you are using, so there are emissions out of it. There is an oil change that could be there. There could be battery change that could be there. And then there could be consumable change, all the bearings that you replace with passage of time, or the tires that you replace with passage of time. So considering your car, there are certain aspects of the car which will impact the environment. So how you do the analysis of those aspects and how it is impacting the environment, and how you're making sure that whenever you are changing your tires, the tires is going to the respective plant for recycling rather than just going for burning and impacting the environment, or the oil change has been done in a manner that the oil may be recycled rather than just been thrown on the ground. And similarly, you are maintaining your car and doing the regular maintenance of the car so that the emissions may not be crossing the limits that has been described by the rules and regulations and may not be impacting the environment. So all these areas can well be applied to your car, and the aspect impact analysis can be well understood by your car example as well, in addition to the boiler example that I'm showing you. Now, moving ahead, there is another concept which I want to discuss, which is described in the 6.1.2 clause, which talks about life cycle assessment. Now, let me tell you that this life cycle assessment was not there in the previous ISO 14001-2004 version. This is the new phenomena which came in 2015. So just let me give you an highlight to that. And picture speaks louder than words. So I have put a pictorial view to make you understand a life cycle assessment. Now, life cycle assessment is basically the life cycle of your entire product till it is consumed by the end consumer. So I'm giving you an example here of a cloth manufacturing organization or a textile company. Okay. And you are taking the raw material that you are consuming, which is usually the yarn, and then you are processing that yarn to manufacture the cloth or manufacture the garment or whatever you want to do. And then the output is the textile cloth or the textile product or the garment. Now, what the life cycle assessment is asking you to do, that starting from the raw material, what could be the different aspect which can impact the environment? So we need to really see the process step by step till it is in our control, which is the raw material storage and manufacturing of textiles. So the first two boxes are called the area of control. And then when you are sending the product outside to be used by the end consumer, that is called the area of influence. You really cannot control how, if I'm the user of that cloth, how am I going to consume and to dispose that cloth? You cannot control that. So standard says that you need to provide that information to the end consumer to dispose that in an environmental safe manner. Let's suppose you may say that not to burn it, maybe recycle it, maybe have for some other use, but maybe use for land, but do not do not burn it. Do not just throw it on the land. So those are you can use in the landfills, but do not just throw it on the land. So these are the this is called a life cycle assessment, that throughout the product life cycle, you need to understand the different aspects of that product, and you need to make sure that all those aspects are covered, considering the area of control, which is your factory, till it has been consumed by the end consumer. I can give you another example before I explain you this further, is of an example of a toner or a cartridge. If you see from the HP or the Canon, they normally have certain instructions on those cartridges. And what they say is that after the usage of the cartridge, you can submit them back so that they can safely dispose it off, but do not just throw it on the ground because of the chemical waste and the solid waste. Similarly, so this is called a life cycle perspective, that how you are making aware the end consumer to dispose this product in an environmental safe manner and not to impact the environment. But that area would be called area of influence. And before that area, when you are in charge of that product from the raw material till the X factory, that is called the area of control. Now, if you're looking at the manufacturing of textile, this process, now interestingly, this process is having certain inputs, which is in terms of the energy, the color, the chemicals, the water, and the maintenance of that, which again uses certain chemicals. Now, all these are the different aspects of your activity that you need to consider, which may impact the environment. As is written on the top, that everything that you are using, which is an input to the process, has an impact on the environment. Similarly, if you are looking at the bottom side, so what we are having out, apart from the product on the right, the bottom is showing you the solid waste, the waste chemical, noise, and air emissions. Now, as I showed you in the previous slide, these are again all the aspects which may impact the environment. So I think this is a pretty good slide which can explain you that how well you can go about this thing and how well you can understand the different aspects and different areas of your process, and how you can go one by one into those processes and establish the different aspects which may be impacting the environment. Now, what I've done is that there is a requirement in the standard which talks about evaluation of significance. We need to evaluate the significant aspect which may impact the environment. Now, very interestingly, the significant aspects has two dimensions to it. One is driven by the law of the land. So there are a number of laws, environmental laws and regulations that you need to comply, which defines that what is a significant aspect within your organization, and you must need to control it. But then there are other areas for which the law may not that be defined. For example, the consumption of electricity. For that, you yourself can define that they are significant, and you can put a control to that, and you can go ahead from there. So this qualitative methodology will give you an insight that how the environmental aspects are evaluated being significant. And do not limit yourself that this is only the qualitative methodology. You can have quantitative analysis as well. So let's understand, for the sake of simplicity, because this is a webinar, I just keep it simple so that people can understand. So there's a traffic light concept, the red, yellow, and green, as you can see, and they are self-explanatory. So any aspect which has a greater impact on the environment would be either put as red or yellow. A little difference between red and yellow, but a green one is the aspect which is controlled, however poses moderate threat to the environment, an opportunity to the organization for improvement. And in the next example, you will learn that how we can put a green mark to an aspect, And then the last one, which is blue, we have added it, which is the aspect require further research to establish. So at the moment, we cannot establish that this is impacting the environment and we are good with it. Or the quantity is so low that we are good with it. For example, the air emissions in case of a service sector organization. So air emissions, because there's no manufacturing going on, so that can be declared depending upon the levels. That can be declared as a blue concept. So now with this qualitative methodology, and you keep in mind that this is a signal light concept, the traffic light concept, starting from red, yellow, green, and blue. We can consider different aspects of an organization, and you can well correlate this example with your own organizational working. So these are the different aspects. So for example, water consumption. Every organization may have water consumption. The impact is resource depletion. Now, as far as the importance in terms of impacting to the environment, that is yellow. And then legal concern is yellow because there's no legal regulation as apart from the quota that may be assigned depending upon the scarcity of water in that particular geography. And then so this analysis will help you in describing the significance level. And this is just an example. You may agree, you may disagree on that, but this is one way of doing it. So for electricity consumption, you can see that the taxes are there, the tax element is there. And look at the difference between the water consumption and hazardous waste generation. So the hazardous waste generation has a straight legal requirement that is applicable. So it is put in red because if you go beyond that limit, you can be fined and you can be penalized by the government. So you need to understand that where the regulations are very straight and very stringent, those are declared as legal concern are declared as red, importance is red, and so on and so forth. So you can do this qualitative analysis, and that is one way of doing it. You can do a risk-based analysis based on the aspect and impact analysis based on calculating the values, different numeric values. That is also true. So there are a number of ways and means through which you need to evaluate the significant aspect which may be impacting the environment. So that is, again, one of the requirements. People ask me to give examples on aspect impact. I'm showing you one example, which is a qualitative analysis. You can do a quantitative analysis. You can assign numeric values to it to calculate, to have a calculation to declare on your risk ranking that which are high risk and which are low risk areas, or which are significant or insignificant or less significant impacts. Now let's talk about U.S. laws. And since I'm based in U.S., I'm based in Texas, so I just cover those areas. But again, that is quite true for your own geography, for your own country, whatever I'm telling you, for the U.S. And you will find the laws, of course, in whichever geography you are, you will find the laws applicable, and more or less they are the same laws. There's not much of the difference in that. And so for the U.S., some of the laws that you can access. So for U.S., there are three tiers of the laws. First tier is the federal law, which is by the federal government for the environmental, and there's an agency which is called EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. Now, this EPA is present in a lot of countries with the same name, EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. So, but you may find different in your country. So just search for it, and you will come to know that the environmental laws are there. And in US, there is another thing which is called state laws. So all the 50 states, they have their own laws, and they have their own official organizations, which provide environmental regulations. For example, in Texas, the agency is called TCEQ, which stands for Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They provide their laws over and above the federal laws. And the rule is that the state laws cannot be relaxed than the federal laws. They would be either equal to the federal laws, or they would be more stringent than the federal laws. In California, a lot of laws are definitely more stringent than the federal law. And the organization or the industry, in whichever part or whichever state they are, they need to comply with the local laws as well as with the federal law. So they need to comply with that. But most of the time, the local or the state laws are good enough to comply with, and that make you automatically complied with the federal law as well. So what happens is that I've given you the website where you can find for your own state in whichever state you are located. And for those audience who are sitting outside US, you can search for your areas, just write environmental laws for your country, and you will find a lot of resources on the internet. But you need to understand that for environmental management system, one or the major driving force is the environmental rules and regulations. You need to comply with the law of the land. A lot of our permits, a lot of our working permits are dependent on that. So the companies which are seeking not just for the 14,001 certification, rather more than that, for them to work the environmental laws, the knowledge of the environmental laws, and compliance with the environmental laws is a requirement of the law of the land. So the federal laws are there, the state laws are there, and then there are local laws are also there, which can be specific to an industrial sector or an industrial zone, which can be over and above the state laws. So you need to understand that which laws are applicable in which part of the geography you are, and which type of an industrial zone you are, and what are the laws and regulations. You need to comply with that. So regarding the compliance principle, um, without any without any relaxation, everyone is responsible, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. So you need to understand that you need to comply as an organization. You need to be aware, and even if you are using a consultant, if the consultant may miss out on something, there is you would be responsible, not the consultant. So you need to understand these phenomena, and you need to be very well aware of the applicable laws and regulations. The consequences of non-compliance could be the civil penalties, then there could be criminal penalties as well, depending upon the type of the damage that you are doing. For example, there have been a number of cases where the shipping agencies have been heavily fined for leaking the oil in the sea for one reason or the other. So those are some good examples that when there were heavy fines on the shipping industry regarding that, or there had been an explosion in certain part of the world for certain chemical plants. I don't want to name the chemical plants, but those chemical plants, they has caused real destruction there, not just environment wise, but health and safety wise. So those are all and they were heavily fined on those areas. That can be fined, that can be withdrawal of or variation of the permits and recovery of the cleanup costs. So the rehabilitation costs, the companies has to bear those costs as well. So the US regulatory framework, as I said, that they comprise of three tiers. One is the federal law from Congress, which is basically 30 laws, and EPA, which is our Environmental Protection Agency, develop regulations to implement laws. So the laws been developed by Congress, and they develop regulations to implement those laws. And then the state laws. As I said, that state must be no less stringent than federal requirement. They may go beyond. So they can be more stringent, but either they are equal to the federal laws or they can be more stringent than the federal laws. What happens is that as a working organization, you interact with the state laws a lot more than the federal law, because they're more close and they visit a lot more than the federal government. And then local regulations. Now, local regulations, as I said, that can be that industrial zone regulations, and that can include certain international regulations like Restriction of Hazardous Substances Directives, which is called ROHS, or Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment Directives, or REACH, Registration, Evaluation, Authorization, and Restriction of Chemicals. So these are some international regulations which can be adapted by an industrial zone, and then you need to comply. But these are all the driving factors for an environmental management system. So when you are establishing an environmental management system, the legal compliance clause, which is 6.1.3, is a major clause which you need to comply in order to establish an environmental management system aligned with the local needs and expectations. So the permits, now there are a lot of permits which are related to your environment, and companies need to acquire those permits in order to work. So there could be site-specific regulation under the general provision of law, typically for air emissions and water discharge. So there could be permits which could be very site-specific. Then permits can be enforced by the federal, state, and local levels. So there's a fine if you are not maintaining those permits. And with permits, like, you need to acquire those permits, and then you need to keep on validating those permits, like keep on renewing those permits. So So there's an expiry procedure with the permits, and you need to stay always in a valid status to continue your work. Otherwise, you'll be subject to fine. Then permits can change based on the government needs to regulate performance, and permits can be so. As a result of any environmental violation, you can really the government can withdraw your permits and cancel your permits, and cancellation of a permit means you cannot work anymore unless you overcome that issue which has caused that cancellation. So permits can be related to actual discharge and emission limits, monitoring requirements, reporting requirements, and other details as needed. So I recall one of the questions, somebody asked me a question that what is the process for reporting issues, minor and major, to the industry or to the ministry. So the thing is that all these requirements are legal, your geography related. So once you get to know about the law contains the requirements how to report. So it is not one fit for all. You need to understand that which laws are applicable for which permits, how to report any violation or any issue, environmental issue within your organization to the respective authority, and that's how it goes. So the knowledge of reporting would be contained within the regulations or within the permit guidelines. Then there are certain other laws, for example, National Environmental Policy Act. So I've covered it in few slides so that anyone can refer this slide later on and can take the benefit out of that. Environmental policies, Occupational Safety and Health Act. It basically says that evaluate everything that you're doing regarding the health and safety. Clean Air Act, as the name implies, it's about clean air. So they have given certain guidelines on that. Safe drinking water. Clean Water Act, don't put anything in the water. So when you are doing the discharges, different discharges, there are limits to what you can discharge and what you cannot discharge. So all those limits, all those contents that you are discharging in the water and the sewerage, you need to control those elements so that you may not contaminate the end water there. And then there are certain other laws which are related to environment, contain the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, Hazardous Material Transportation Act, Toxic Substance Control Act, and then Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act. So as I said, that I've formulated all these laws for you people so that it may narrow down your research, and you can well refer these slides because some people were interested in EPA regulations and rules. What are they, and which one are applicable? So you need to see in which type of industry you are in and which type of laws can be applicable to you. Some other laws which can be applicable to a lot of industries like Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act and Pollution Prevention Act. So and so on and so on. There are a number of laws which are applicable. So these are some of the critical laws which which are usually applicable to a lot of industries, and company do follow those laws while as applicable to the part of the geography that they are in. Then the last domain, last category was regarding the environmental performance evaluation, that how do we evaluate the environmental performance? And with that environmental performance, I have put a pictorial view so that you can understand how to evaluate the environmental performance, on what basis. So one thing that you can well understand is if we are staying within the limits and as prescribed by the law of the land, and if we are further improving on that. So that is one of the direct environmental performance evaluation that you can do, but it is not limited to that. So we need to first set parameters that which thing we are going to monitor to evaluate the environmental performance. And we can follow the same PDCA cycle one more time. Now, how does it go is that you need to select the indicators for environmental performance evaluation. Now, those indicators could be your air emissions, could be your waste, could be your liquid emissions. So that can be driven by the legal and regulatory requirement that is provided by the government. That is one part of it. But then you can go beyond that. For example, there is no regulation how much solid waste you can produce. So the solid waste that you are producing, how much solid waste you can reduce within your process, that is again your indicator. So you can set these type of objectives, which is not just related to the limits of emissions and effluents, but they are related to different aspects of your activity for which there are no laws, but you are working to conserve the environment, to ensure sustainability, and to avoid depletion of resources. So, for example, you are going solar. Somebody asked me a question that solar power industry is part of it. They are contributing heavily to the 14,001 thing. And I'll come back to it when I'll be discussing towards the end that what are the different elements and where is the fine line of this industrialization and modernization vis-a-vis the sustainability concept. So I'll come back to this point, but coming back to the setting the indicators, so indicators can be set in terms of making my plant green, conserving the energy, conserving the solid waste, or increasing the part of recycling waste. I can also go beyond that. I will work with the suppliers which are environmental conscious or which has environmental program that is there. So that all can be can be set as an indicator. Once you select those indicators of your area and your other area, whether it's legal requirements and other requirements, you can go by collecting the data, analyze and converting the data, assessing the information and reporting and communication. So you can communicate that. And based on that, usually there is a process which is called management review process. And this third point, which says check and act. You can review and improve the EP and you can redo your work by raising the bar. By once you achieve it, then what else you can do better, what else you can do better. So you can keep on setting those indicators. So there are certain indicators which may not get better, but then your objective should be they should never cross the limit or as described by the EPA. So those monitoring and those maintenance, that is called operating level indicators. And then improving level indicators, as I gave you certain examples, you can set both of them, and that could be good indicators for environmental performance evaluation. So with that, these covers my 4 category. There are certain other questions which were put in the questions that is submitted by you people. And some of them were like regarding the cost of 14,001. So the implementation cost and the certification cost, that varies from organization to organization. Again, there is no one answer for all. It varies from one organization to the other organization. So you need to understand that this is heavily dependent on the type of consultant, if you are hiring a consultant or not, which certification body, and what is your scope of certification. It all depends on that. So there's no one answer to that cost thing. The other question is that regarding the lead auditor certification, if you are already an internal auditor, then how can you achieve the lead auditor certification? So an internal auditor and lead auditor, there's a major difference between the two. And in lead auditor certification goes with the IRCA, which is called International Register of Certificated Auditor certification process. So the course should be approved by IRCA or some other approving authority. And those lead auditor courses are like accepted worldwide. So if you're looking at a career to work with a certification body, you need to do a lead auditor course, which is a 5 days course with an examination, maybe approved by IRCA or other bodies. And then you need to continue your career as a lead auditor. So there is a difference between an internal auditor and a lead auditor certification. And then somebody asked me a question that how can you join Bureau Veritas? So there is a career page on the Bureau Veritas main website. You can always look at that career page, and all the jobs are available there. You can apply online. So that is one of the questions that I received. I received another question which is regarding the very interesting question, that why there is no dedicated clause for change management in 14,001 while we have in 9,001 and 45,001. So the person is right that there is no dedicated clause, but you need to understand that it is not the point of if there is a dedicated clause or not. The change management has been discussed throughout the 14,001 at 4 or 5 places. So the element of the change management is very much there. The overall philosophy of this 7-clause structure is a constant, which is the PDCA cycle: 4, 5, 6, 7 related to plan, 8 related to do, 9 related to check, and 10 related to act. That is the overall philosophy. Now, we can always debate on these kind of questions, that why there is not a separate clause. In 45,001, there is a separate clause for consultation and participation, which is not there in the other 9,001 and 14,001 standard. Similarly, there's a standard which I'm just reading, which is ISO 37,001 anti-bribery management system, in which the risk assessment is discussed in 4.5 rather than, and again in 6. So in detail, it is discussed in 4.5 along with the context of the organization. So we can always debate on why it is not written here, why it is not written there. But the important thing that you need to understand as an implementer and as an auditor is that where these elements are within the standard, are they addressed there? And if you can comply with all those elements or not, under which heading, under which number, why it is not there. So the structure of the standard is similar as far as the philosophy of the standard is concerned. The elements are more or less addressed in the standard, but then there's a little change here and there in every standard. But that should not be the point of concern for the implementer as well as for the auditors. What Another interesting question I received is, what are the upcoming challenges that will affect our impact on climate change activities? So I would really like to give my thoughts on this one particular question, which is regarding the usage of the resources. So as you all know, that we are trying to shift our focus from the energy consumption from the usual ways of the fossil fuel and the oil and gas sector, and we are more moving towards the solar energy. But the solar energy is in turn dependent on the batteries that we are having. And for batteries, we need lithium to make those batteries and to sustain the charge and to be able to provide the energy. So on one side, if we are relaxing ourselves, or we are reducing our dependency on the oil and gas, on the other side, we are depleting a resource from the earth in terms of lithium or the chemicals or the things that we need to produce those batteries and those other type of components through which we are going to gain the energy. So we need to understand that there is a fine line between both the elements. With this, all the advancement in the cars and everything, we know that all has been dependent on the computer circuits, and for that we need chips, and to make those chips we need all that material and everything. So during the pandemic, there was a slowdown in those chips from the chip manufacturing organization, and that has impacted the whole supply chain. So this is what happens, that once we switch over and once we increase the dependence on the other sources, then that has an impact on the depletion of the resources that we are going to use for other means for providing the energy. So we need to create a balance. I believe, in my personal view, the usage of the energy should be monitored, and not like our daily based usage, but the consumption of the energy, or the advancement in the technology and everything, that has this side that we need more and more power. The cell phones that was coming with the earlier, it was coming with 1 day charge, now coming with 7 day charge and things like that. So those are all the advancement that we need to really draw a line somewhere in between, that how much the mother nature we can exploit to acquire all these kind of resources to provide us to fulfill our energy needs. So that is where the real question comes in, and we need to look into it. So that is one of the things I see as a challenge in terms of the environmental issues coming forward. With that, I think I've answered all your questions. If you may have any other questions, and you can always contact me. And what we are going to, and the questions that has been submitted throughout this presentation, I will formulate the answers to them, and I will send through my email to all of you the answer sheet, the answer regarding your questions which have been submitted during the session, or if you may submit them later on even. So with that, these are our public and virtual classroom trainings that we offer, which contains all the ISO major standards and a lot of other areas as well. You can contact Ms. Cindy Haight for any of your codes, and you can register online as well in these trainings. This is my training website where all these courses are available for my November and December, and we are about to upload our 2022 calendar as well by the end of October. You will find that calendar as well, so you can get yourself registered there. And then this is my website, which is bbnaclickmeeting.com. So the same webinar will be available on this website. You can go there and you can register yourself for free, or anyone you can refer to, they can go and register themselves for free, and they can listen to this webinar again. And this is the contact. So you like to send any of your further questions, even after this webinar, you can send it on the top email, which is bbsirtraining@bureauveritas.com. All attendees will get a $100 discount code on training, so you can use that discount on my online trainings. The certificate for this webinar will be awarded on submitting webinar feedback. So you look out for an email which will be submitted to you, which will be containing a link, so you can go and submit your webinar feedback. And I'm always there to help you out. So even if after this webinar you want to contact me, my email is there, my cell phone is there. I'm very much available to answer any of your queries. With that, I'd like to thank you all. I hope the information shared would be of use to you, and I would love to see you sometime back in one of my other seminars. Thank you very much.